We all know that Jahmyr Gibbs has what it takes to be an RB1 in general, but does he have what it takes to be the RB1 overall? Well, if you know anything about Jahmyr Gibbs, the first half of his rookie season was awful. If you were an owner, you were concerned, hey, these guys took him 12th overall and they're not even using him. And then when week 7 hit, we said, yep, this is what we were expecting the entire time. Well, if we extrapolate his games from week 7 until week 18, when they were actually using him, would he have been a potential RB1? Let's take a look at that. Jahmyr Gibbs is 5'9", 199 with a 29.4 BMI, so it is generally below the 30.0 threshold to be a bell cow back. And obviously, when David Montgomery and Gibbs were healthy, they were using them in a timeshare. However, as the year progressed, Gibbs started to get more and more usage, and he even started to get goal line work. And we even saw a couple games when David Montgomery wasn't healthy that Gibbs was used as a featured back and was given over 25 carries. So he did appear to have what it took to be a bell cow back when necessary. When we take a look at his metrics, his 4.36 40-yard dash is in the 99th percentile. Now, because he's 5'9" and 199, that gives him a 110.1 speed score, which is in the 91st percentile. That's still really, really good. If he was just a little bit bigger and was able to keep that 40-yard dash, his speed score would be out of this world. But regardless, he is a very, very good athlete. When we think about where he's going in redraft and dynasty, in redraft he's going off the board as the RB5, and in dynasty he's being drafted as the RB4. Well, he's a first-round pick, so he has already had 1 year of his contract used up, but that would mean he has 3 guaranteed remaining, then a 5th-year option. Then they could potentially franchise him. So that guarantees at least 5 more years remaining of playing in one of the best offenses for running back production. So when we're finished examining his situation, his advanced stats, and extrapolating his stats versus the 5-year averages to be an RB1, we're going to see if it does make sense for him to be taken 5th overall in redraft and 4th overall in dynasty. When Jahmyr Gibbs was picked 12th overall by the Lions, multiple analysts gave it a D, a C, an F grade. They hated the pick, they thought it made no sense, and the value was terrible. While I understand the thought process of drafting a running back isn't going to help your team, blah, 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 I thought it was a fantastic pick for them. Now, I didn't have any idea that, first of all, Sam Laporta was going to be as good as he was, or that even the Lions' offense was going to be quite as good as it was. But Jared Goff had been playing like, an above-average quarterback. They already had Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the premier wide receivers. Even if he's generally a slot and flanker, he can play X though. But then they had brought in David Montgomery to be the power back, and then Jahmyr Gibbs to be the lightning, as well as a well above average receiving back. I thought that, along with the fact that their O-line was tremendous, made a lot of sense, and it was going to make their offense explosive. Even if I didn't think it was going to be quite as explosive as it ended up being. I mean, when we look at his collegiate profile, he had 460 rushing yards as a freshman, along with 303 receiving yards with 7 total touchdowns, and he had 24 receptions. That is a very, very good start as a freshman. Then he stepped it up to 746 rushing yards, 6 total touchdowns, and 470 receiving yards on 36 receptions as a sophomore. Both of those seasons were at Georgia Tech. Well, he was incredibly impressive when he went to Alabama as a junior. He had 926 rushing yards, 10 total touchdowns, 444 receiving yards, and 44 receptions. People were saying, I don't know if he'll be a first-round pick. He looked every bit the part of a first-round pick, in my opinion. Now, did I think he was going to be taken 12th overall? No, but I really thought he was going to be probably in the low 20s. I bet the Lions are really, really happy they took him now. And to further justify the point I'm getting at, they finished 5th in team rushing yards per game. They had 27 rushing touchdowns, and they made the NFC Championship game. Although they lost, that was way further than really anyone had expected them to go. And how did they do it? On the back of rushing the ball. They rode David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs all the way to the NFC Championship game. So yes, while running backs shouldn't be taken in the first round, I understand what they're getting at. But if you can really, really improve your offense and ground and pound teams and there's nothing they can really do about it, I think it does make sense sometimes, and especially in the Lions case. All right, so getting back to Jahmyr Gibbs, his 945 rushing yards this past season ranked 17th, his 316 receiving yards ranked 16th, his 52 receptions ranked 9th, his 11 total touchdowns also ranked 9th, his .96 fantasy points per opportunity ranked 8th in the NFL. That's his fantasy points either by reception or carry. His 16.1 fantasy points per game ranked 8th, which when you consider he didn't really do much of anything before week 7 is incredibly impressive. His run block rating of 54 was 7th in the NFL, so his O-line admittedly did a fantastic job of getting him in advantageous situations, as well as offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. His 3.52 yards created per touch ranked 22nd, so not the best. He didn't necessarily create as much on his own, but he was very good with his vision, and he took what was given to him extremely well. When you look at his true yards per carry of 4.8, that ranks 7th. His 5.4 yards per touch ranked 8th. His 23.9% juke rate ranked 9th. His 56 total evaded tackles ranked 13th. His 8.2 breakaway run rate, which is runs of 15 plus yards, was 2nd. And his 15 breakaway runs in total ranked 3rd. Getting back to the true yards per carry, that takes away excessively long gains to make it so it's a measure of your consistency of getting positive yards. So first of all, he was consistently getting positive yards, but then he was also extremely explosive, having the second highest breakaway run rate. So this guy is a very good running back in a fantastic situation. So I figured out the 5-year averages to be an RB1 finishes 1 through 12 in fantasy in terms of carries, targets, total touchdowns, fantasy points in a full PPR setting, and fantasy points in a half PPR setting. So 2019 through 2023 is represented on the top half of that chart. And then the bottom is the average of all of those 5 years combined. So in general, over the past 5 seasons, an RB1 needs to have 244 carries, 63 targets, 1,514 total yards, 12 touchdowns, 275.9 full point PPR points, and 250.4 half PPR points. Let's see how Jahmyr Gibbs finished. All right, so once again, the 5-year averages to be an RB1 in general, you need 244 carries, 63 targets, 1,514 total yards, 12.2 touchdowns, 275.9 full PPR points, and 250.4 half PPR points. When we look at Jahmyr Gibbs' finishes, his 945 rushing yards and 316 receiving yards equaled 1,261 total yards, so a little bit lower than the average of 1,514 necessary. He did have 52 receptions, which was 9th in the NFL, though. His 11 total touchdowns did fall about 1 short of the average of 12. His 182 carries did fall short of the 244.2 carries on average, and his 71 targets, however, did exceed the 63 average. Now, what's important to remember here is essentially the first half of the season, he didn't do anything and really wasn't given that much work. And then as soon as week 7, he went off. In the second half of the season, he won many, many weeks for us in fantasy football. And I was curious, if we took his weeks 7 through 18 fantasy points, figured out the per game averages, divided by 11, and multiplied by 17 to get his 17-game pace, if his stats from the second half of the season would have been the entire season, what could we have really expected from him? Well, once I did that, he would have had 187 carries. Yes, that would have fallen short of the 244 on average. His 82 targets, though, would have well exceeded the 63.4. His 1,184 total yards would have fallen short of the 1,514.8 for sure. However, he was on pace for 1 touchdown a game, so he would have finished with 17 as opposed to 12. And then when you think about all of these factors combined, in a full PPR, he would have gone for 314 total points. Well, the average to be an RB1 in general was 275.9, so he would have easily been an RB1. And then his half PPR points of 284.7 would have easily exceeded the 250.4. But then I was also curious, if the second half of the season would have been essentially the entire season, where would he have finished? Well, after figuring it out, he would have been the RB2 in a full point PPR, although a little bit behind McCaffrey for sure. And then he would have been the RB3 in a half PPR in 2023. And that's without obviously extrapolating other players' 17 game paces. Some also missed a little bit of time. But what that shows me is that with especially McCaffrey getting older, he's probably not going to be the same running back. And yes, Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson are in much more advantageous situations this season. But what that tells me is that if he's able to have a full season of what his second half of the season was like from this past year, he absolutely is a legitimate threat to be the RB1, especially if David Montgomery misses any time. Because as we saw this past season, in weeks 7 and 8 specifically, he was used as a full bell cow back. This guy is absolutely scary in the open field. He has great vision, amazing agility to cut all the way across the field. He has great vision to let his blocks develop and find the holes. He's blazing fast. I'm really shocked he didn't have a bunch of 50-yard touchdowns. It may be that he's ultimately more quick than fast, but he did have a 4.36 40-yard dash, so this guy is still really, really fast. Really, we can expect wonderful things from him this next season and in the future. This team is going to be fantastic. It's going to be one of the most high-scoring offenses in football, and this guy is absolutely capable of being the RB1. Well, there you have it. If you extrapolate out his weeks 7 through 18 finish over the course of an entire season, he would have finished as the RB2 in a full point PPR and the RB3 in a half point PPR. What do you think? Do you think that he has RB1 overall upside? Do you disagree with that? Let me know below in the comments section. And another thing I'm curious about, where would you have him in redraft leagues and dynasty leagues? We think that he's going to be back for week 1, so he's probably not going to miss any time. That would have been a worry theoretically, but with him probably being back for week 1 and then likely being healthy, unless obviously he gets injured, but we can't predict injuries. Where would you have him in redraft and dynasty leagues? I'm curious, please let me know below in the comment section. Another thing, if you like videos like these and want to see more of them, please like and subscribe. It lets me know that you want to see more content like this. With that being said, I'm the Fantasy Football Strategist. Thank you and have a good day.